Have you ever stopped and wondered where your personality really comes from? Today, we're cracking open a 2,500-year-old text to look at a pretty mind-blowing idea that our deepest, most ingrained traits might just be echoes from a life before this one. Let's dig in.
Seriously, think about it. Why are some of us just naturally quick to anger while others seem to coast through life totally calm? Why do some people grapple with jealousy while others are generous to a fault? Is it all just DNA and how you were raised, or could there be something else, something older at play?
It's kind of comforting to know we're not the first to ask this. Believe it or not, this exact question was the focus of a huge gathering thousands and thousands of years ago. And it wasn't some dry philosophical debate. It was a really personal search for answers. I want you to just picture this for a second. 8,000 people, all gathered together looking for answers from the Buddha. They're just like us, really, filled with all these questions about why they are the way they are, hoping for some kind of insight that would finally make sense of it all. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of just handing them an answer on a silver platter, the Buddha does something really clever. He first takes them on a little journey to the very edge of what they think they know. He wants them to see for themselves what they don't know. So he starts with the biggest questions imaginable. He asks them, hey, how does life actually begin? Not just the mechanics of it, but where does that spark, that consciousness that becomes you, where does it come from before the womb? Is it from some heavenly place or an animal realm? Where? And for every single one of these deep probing questions, the seekers all had to come back with the same honest answer. We do not know. And that's not a failure. That's actually the whole point. By admitting they don't know, they've emptied their cup, so to speak. Now they're finally ready for a truly new idea. And this is where it all starts to click into place. Now that he's guided them past their old assumptions, the Buddha introduces a core teaching that connects who they are right now to a very, very distant past. The big reveal is this idea of residual habits. Basically, the teaching says that the state of being we came from, whether it was a heavenly one, a human one, or something else entirely, it leaves an imprint. It leaves a residue. So our personality today isn't just random. It's profoundly shaped by these old, ingrained habits from a past life. So what do these imprints actually look like? Let's start with the most intense ones, the imprints said to come from the hell realms. Now, try not to think of these as literal places, but more like deep-seated psychological states. In this case, a state defined by some really intense suffering and anger. The signs of this imprint are, well, they're surprisingly specific. The text talks about a person whose voice might sound hoarse or panicked. They're jumpy, easily frightened, and just can't bring themselves to trust others. Even their dreams are intense, filled with nightmares of being chased or attacked. And at the very root of all this is a powerful residual habit of anger. Okay, so moving from that intense anger, the next imprint is from the animal realm. This one is less about conscious pain and more about a kind of instinctual fog, a deep-seated ignorance. According to this teaching, someone carrying this imprint might find their mind feels a bit sluggish, maybe lazy, or resistant to new ideas. They might be drawn to unclean spaces, speak in a muddled way, and even lean towards being deceitful. The core habit here isn't really malice. It's just a fundamental lack of clarity, a kind of ignorance about how things really work. All right, next up we have a realm that's built around a painful, nagging feeling of never, ever having enough. This is the imprint of the hungry ghost. And this isn't just about being physically hungry. It's a state of mind, a constant feeling that something is missing. This imprint can show up as intense jealousy, being really stingy, and just having this overwhelming need to hoard things, money, stuff, even people's attention. The core habit driving all of this is a powerful, all-consuming greed that by its very nature can never be satisfied. Now, this next realm is fascinating. The Asuras. They're described as being powerful, they're smart, but their whole world is defined by conflict. It's all driven by pride and a searing envy of others. So this imprint often shows up as a really strong ego. Someone who is maybe a bit arrogant, always has to be right, and is super quick to jump into an argument. They hold on to grudges forever and get a kick out of belittling other people. The core drivers here are a deep-seated pride and just not being able to stand it when others succeed. So after all that intensity, what does it look like if someone's last go-around was also as a human? Well, this realm is seen as a kind of middle ground, a place with huge potential for good. A person with this human imprint tends to be pretty reasonable and balanced. They have a strong sense of integrity, they respect wisdom, and they have a healthy sense of shame. You know, that little voice that stops you from doing harm. They're often good communicators who are grateful and can read people well. This is kind of seen as the ideal starting point for growth. And finally, we get to the imprints from the heavenly realms, the devas. These are states of being that are all about pleasure, beauty, and long, happy lives. Now, this final imprint is brilliant because it shows how even a good starting point can have a catch. People with these habits are gracious, they're kind, they love art, music, beautiful, clean things. Sounds great, right? But there's a subtle trap, a deep underlying attachment to pleasure and comfort. And while it's nice, that attachment can still be a huge obstacle to real freedom. So, okay, we've looked at all 6 imprints. It's really interesting stuff, but what's the point? Well, the text doesn't just give you a diagnosis and leave you hanging. It gives you a prescription. The most important message is that these habits, no matter how deep they run, aren't a life sentence. They can absolutely be transformed.
And the path forward is actually beautiful in its simplicity. For every negative habit, there's a direct antidote. For that residual anger from the hell realm, you actively cultivate compassion. For the ignorance of the animal realm, you cultivate wisdom. You overcome the greed of the hungry ghost by practicing generosity. And you dismantle the pride of the Asura by really contemplating the selfless, interconnected nature of reality.
When you get right down to it, this whole framework isn't about judging yourself or putting labels on other people. It's not about saying, oh, he's definitely from the animal realm. No, it's meant to be a mirror, a compassionate and really insightful tool for self-awareness.
By honestly looking at our strongest tendencies, our default settings, whether it's anger, attachment, pride, or compassion, we can get a much deeper understanding of what makes us tick. It gives us a map. Not a map of who we're doomed to be, but a map of the journey we can take to become who we truly want to be. So what does this mirror show you?